So I was looking through the new cards that have been added to Arena via the Phyrexia Alchemy set. For those of you who don't know, after every single set that comes out, they do an alchemized version about 2 weeks later, maybe 3 weeks later, where they introduce new cards that are digital only, and they rebalance some older cards for the digital only format Alchemy. I think Alchemy is a terrible fucking format, but the reason I look at these is because I do really enjoy playing Historic, Brawl, and Gladiator on the platform, and these cards are all legal there as well. To explain the stance that I have, I think the digitally designed cards are perfectly fine. Some of them are very fun and interesting. I like Alpha Oracle, or Oracle of the Alpha, or whatever, is a great piece of design and an interesting card, and people have a lot of fun with it. So I think the digital only cards are fine in digital only formats, like Historic Brawl, for example. I do kind of wish Historic never went down that road though, because I always dreamed of a day when paper Historic could be a thing at a Pro Tour, but I guess that ship has sailed. Especially when we look at the Arena Championship and how little interest Wizards have tried to foster in Historic as a competitive format over the last weekend, which is tragic as fuck, and I might do a video on that a bit further down the line as well. The Historic versus Explorer versus Pioneer and the future of these 1v1 formats that Wizards seem to give less of a shit about than they should. Anyway, so I was looking through these cards at what's new, what I can play in Gladiator, Historic Brawl, and similar. I've been a bit out of the loop with a baby recently, so by that I mean I had a baby recently, so I'm a little bit behind and I'm catching up. This card caught my eye. Darksteel Hydra. Oh, a reference to the days gone by of a nostalgia bomb. A reference that I understand.
I understood that reference.
Darksteel is an incredibly hard alloy or metal that comes from Mirrodin. It was built or forged by the Volshock of original Mirrodin. It is known to be indestructible. You can't destroy a Darksteel object because it's so hardy. The way it's forged is, even in canon, a little bit mysterious, with a recent reference to the warping of reality to forge it in amongst the furnace layer of new phyrexia to make Blightsteel, or originally perhaps once it's built it can't be reshaped. There's a lot of... It's just an interesting old tidbit, a little bit of magic history. It's a reference to old stuff. And there's a lot of old Darksteel things. Darksteel Ingot and Darksteel Plate being one from original Mirrodin block and one from Scars of Mirrodin block. They're both referenced here. So we have Darksteel Hydra. But wait, it's a Phyrexian Hydra. Oh, they must have got access to Darksteel. Well, that already exists in the form of Blightsteel. Darksteel Colossus is probably the most emblematic, the most well-known Darksteel relic. It's kind of a bit of a relic of a bygone age because no one plays it anymore because it's not good enough, and it was kind of power crept by Blightsteel, which is the Phyrexianized, infected version of Darksteel Colossus. We jump from Darksteel Colossus to Blightsteel Colossus. It goes from being the original indestructible huge creature to an infect version for 1 more mana. But here we see them have access to Darksteel. Is this part of the story or the canon? Well, no, there's no reference to this anywhere as far as I understand it. This is just a thing we're seeing in the Alchemized set, which allows us to explore new things, new characters like Gyox, Brutal Carnivora, or this thing, Vexir, Ictekix Air, which is basically a Seek payoff, which is a digital-only mechanic that then creates golems and has a splicer effect where it buffs all the golems. I think this is a perfectly reasonable design space to explore. It's a Phyrexian thing, splicers and the golems, and it's also a thing that also plays quite well with digital cards already. Meanwhile, Darksteel Hydra is an Abzan X creature that has a power and toughness equal to double the number of oil counters on it. It enters the battlefield with X oil counters, where X is the mana you put into it. And when Darksteel Hydra enters the battlefield, conjure a card named Darksteel Ingot and a card named Darksteel Plate into your hand. Now I am going to roast this a little bit. If it's Phyrexian, it's probably meant to be Blightsteel. That's the established understanding we have right now. Having a wild tangent to that in the alchemized digital only set on Arena is kind of dumb. Next up, Hydras don't really exist on Mirrodin. Across all of the original 3 Mirrodin blocks, and then the 3 Scars of Mirrodin Besieged sets as well, that block, and then New Phyrexia as well, we had one singular Hydra. Phyrexian Hydra. So Hydras aren't native, they're built by the Phyrexians. Have they built one out of Darksteel? And then when they build it, why does it come bearing gifts? Why does the Darksteel Hydra rock up and give you a mana rock and a plate armor? That makes no fucking sense. I did tweet about this and there's some interesting, people were trying to rationalize it, right? Something that I had thought about too is that it's meant to be, when you destroy it, the Darksteel itself that it is made from is reforged into an ingot and an armor. Kind of like the gear you'd get from killing a tabletop monster monster in D&D, or a boss in Elden Ring, or perhaps more accurately, Monster Hunter. But there's a few problems with that. Firstly, it's upon ETB, not upon death. Secondly, it's indestructible, so you can't really destroy it, you can only exile it, and you think that wouldn't leave behind much material if we're honest, outside of things like Thragtusk, of course. And then beyond that, thematically, Darksteel can't be reforged. It wouldn't make sense to kill a Darksteel Hydra and then make a plate of armor out of it. Like, that's the whole point. The stuff is too hard to work with. It's a mystery. So that's been kind of lost to the death of Mirrodin in many ways. And that's the thing. I think this card is just a real fucking whiff of a design. I don't want to shit on it too much because someone out there made this. But this feels like a phoned in last minute. No one at Wizards even looked at this. I've always wondered how the Arena Alchemy cards got made and who gets to get a look in on them to make sure they fit with the main set, the main canon, the main lore, the mechanical and thematic identities of many a thing. This feels like an early design that no one really looked over. It feels like someone is tangentially aware of what Mirrodin is, and that Darksteel is a thing from Mirrodin. If anything, it almost feels like, and I hate to say this, but designed by AI. Like some AI loosely understands some basic stuff about magic that it ripped off of, I don't know, some Polygon articles about magic a few years ago, and then just come up with Darksteel Hydra. I think that ETPs make some stuff, make some old references you get, and that's the other thing that bugs me. It's a popular and well-known creature type attached to a word that we all know has meaning and some nostalgia. Oh, those member berries. Anyone remember Darksteel? And then what it does is just ETBs, and it randomly generates 2 Darksteel things. An ingot, for some reason, a fucking mana rock, and then it also makes a Darksteel plate. It makes 6 mana of objects. Why does it not, like, this is digital only, right? So the world is our fucking oyster. We can do all sorts of weird stuff with this. Why doesn't it generate 2 Darksteel cards from like a potential 30 that equal the CMC of the X you put into it? Perhaps that's a very complicated thing to do. Perhaps it opens it up to being a card you just don't really understand what's going to happen when it dies or enters the battlefield or whatever, because there's so many options and permutations. But they did it with Davriel in the original digital only cards and didn't give a fuck. So why do they care now? The fact that it makes 6 mana of random shit that are just references, it's just a reference. It makes no sense on a thematic or mechanic level, or a story level. It's just like, here's a reference plus creature type, and when it ETBs, I don't fucking know, it generates 2 other references. Do you get it? References. Referential humor doesn't really work unless it's kind of, there's 2 ways I think that this works. I mean, there's not humor, but this is the way I've been thinking about it. When you have a reference, if it's truly absurd and strange, it can have a jarring, a juxtaposing effect. You say a weird fucking thing, and it's funny because it's so weird. On the other hand, you have a reference that recontextualizes what you're talking about. You make reference to something that makes you think, oh yeah, you refer to, I don't know, I'm pulling it out of my arse here, but you reference war when talking about an argument you've had with someone, and thus it recontextualizes the whole thing to be a bit more heightened in terms of what it was. Or in game design, especially card games like this, you have a reference to another game piece that it functions similarly to. So like a sword of X and Y, you know it's going to have 2 effects when it hits somebody. It's kind of like shorthand to help you understand what's happening. Beyond being indestructible, this thing just makes 2 random fucking Darksteel things. This is just 2 old cards that have the Darksteel word written on them, picked at random, like darts thrown at a dartboard. Things pulled out of someone's arse. And the thing that bugs me the most is that I am highlighting this because this card confuses me to the point that it kind of annoys me. But people are going to use this to bemoan digital unique cards, when most of these are non-egregious and perfectly fucking reasonable. Half of them will be pretty fun to play with at least. I've been really enjoying playing with digital only cards. Again, to go back to the Oracle of the Alpha example, a lot of these cards do what they should do, which is make Magic fun in their digital only formats, like Historic Ball and Gladiator. And this card might even end up being fun, but I just don't get it. Like, a card should be grokkable. It should be readable. You should be able to understand it. Just pulling an example out of my arse, think about Skrelv's Hive. You know why it makes 1/1 insects, why they got toxic. In the wider context of the set, that makes sense. And also, it's a hive. And like, it's formatting, a 2-mana enchantment that makes 1/1s. It harkens back to things like Bitter Blossom. It's both got references metatextually to other cards, but also within the confines of its environment. This is just some words that generate some fucking smidgen of remembrance, and it's dumb, and I hate it. I think this is a really, really bad design. And the art's really cool too, and we'll only get it on this lackluster, boring, badly designed digital only card. This is not a rant about digital only cards. It's a rant about how some of them feel very fucking phoned in. Very like, you got 15 minutes at lunch to make this because it's not our focus. And Darksteel Hydra is the epitome of that. It's just remember berries for remember berries' sake. I don't understand. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Thanks for listening to my rant. I'll see you all soon. Ta-ta for now.